There is no subject, in my opinion, more likely to shatter the minds of individuals than Israel and Palestine. This has been a very interesting week as we have seen a massive rupture in the culture war, with once allies becoming enemies, people fighting and complaining, the left exposing themselves for who they really are. I love how the left is just an amalgam of nonsensical anger, like people marching around saying LGBTQ for Palestine. I wonder if any of these individuals have actually looked up what happens to gay people in the West Bank and in Palestine. And while, of course, there are writings suggesting in the West Bank, LGBT stuff is, legal. Yeah, just read the stories about what happened to some of these individuals who tried to engage in what was legal. They're dead. It's kind of brutal. It's brutal to see the left cheering for these things. But I think what we're getting out of all of this is, one, the left has always been relatively crazy, in my opinion. It's a chaotic and destructive force that seems to make no sense. You can see the hypocrisy exposed in organizations like the Anti-Defamation League that refuses to call out Black Lives Matter, despite the fact the founder called for the eradication of Israel. Now, to be specific, the founder said an end to the imperial project called Israel. I'm saying eradicate because, that's what she's basically saying. And I'll put a bit more emotion in the way I describe it. But let me tell you, my friends, what I see with this whole subject is war. And everyone trying to justify why one side is better or right or wrong. And I'm just sitting back like, y'all are nuts. Look, obviously what Hamas did was terrorism, targeting civilians. Obviously, it is bad that in the military strikes on Gaza in retaliation, Israel is killing civilians. Welcome to war, my friends. And, here's what I see. And I got no problem with anybody saying what they want to say. But first, let's start with there are people who work at Timcast who have opinions that they're allowed to have, and I'm not going to scold or police their opinions. And they're critical of Israel. They're critical of Israel. Some have have insinuated that Israel is putting out propaganda or whatever. And it's like, okay, whatever. Like, people have opinions, man. That's like kind of what we do here. Here's what happens. For the most part, the people who are critical of Israel that I know are not supporting Hamas. They're just basically saying Israel's retaliation is over the top. And that's, okay, welcome criticism. I've got no skin in the game here. I can tell you that Hamas is committing acts of terror. But I'm getting messages from other people like, you need to fire your staff, Tim, because, they said something bad. And I'm like, what? Dude, have you ever listened to any one of my shows? I think people's brains have just burst from their skulls on this one. I'm seeing people on the right furious that someone dare have an opinion outside of their aligned opinion on Israel. Many people outright saying Israel is completely justified, should do what they want to do, and, defend themselves, and collateral damage is collateral damage. And I'm like, okay. And then someone else argues that collateral damage is unacceptable. And then I'm told that certain employees here are deeply anti-Semitic because they won't just get behind Israel. And I'm just like, dude, your words mean nothing to me. Okay. Like, you are not going to get me to go to my employee or anyone else and be like, your political opinion is not allowed. It's the stupidest thing imaginable. And I'm like, you send me a message complaining about something someone who works for me said, and my attitude is just like, wow, look, someone else said thing. Thank you for making me aware of a thing they said. Have a nice day. It's funny. What do they think is going to happen? But of course, the left does it too. Like, I'm not saying it's just the right now, but the left is really exposed to themselves here. This is what I love. I love the collapse and the realignment in the culture war. Mediaite reports, this is bullish. Anti-Trump host lashes out over report MSNBC benched Muslim anchors, which MSNBC vehemently denies. I love this because the denial's meaningless. They can deny it all they want. They did bench them. It's a question of why were they benched and what were they being removed for? Well, over at newarab.com, they say MSNBC removes 3 Muslim presenters amid Israel's Gaza war. I just love it. MSNBC loves to screech into the wind about the far right and white supremacy. But then, of course, when Israel is retaliating against Gaza, and now you've got the left, all these leftist publications are like, Israel's committing war crimes. And then, of course, you've got people on the right saying Hamas is committing acts of terror. And it's like, when we say, like, yes, Hamas committed acts of terror, it was brutal, it was bloody. You then get people saying, yeah, well, what did Israel do first? And I'm like, I'll tell you my position on this one. Being in war doesn't justify you going and killing children and civilians. And then I'll tell you this, too. Like, there are people that this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people on the right now calling for like censorship or something, or insinuating that at the very least. I'm seeing people on the anti-establishment side who I normally, big fan of, advocating things without proof or evidence, putting out claims. And I'm like, oh, man, this whole subject is just like someone reaches into someone's brain and just scrambles it all up. And I'm just sitting back like, dude, y'all are nuts. OK, y'all are nuts. I love this, though. The hypocrisy exposed. MSNBC reportedly removed these 3 reporters. And I'll show you the story from Semaphore, republished by Yahoo News. And this is what I really despise with establishment narratives in media. Semaphore titled the article, Inside MSNBC's Middle East Conflict. This is what we call burying the lead. Max Tanny writes, I wonder who gave it this headline, because this headline is unclickable. No information is conveyed, and only the most ardent of supporters of Semaphore would read something like this. In most of the internet, you need to tell someone something in a headline to get them to click it to explore more. The real story here that Semaphore buried is that, yes, they removed these anchors. Instead of titling it that, which is the news, they just write inside their coverage, which means nothing to no one and disappears. What happens then is people who did see the story picked it up and then ran with the headline, MSNBC removes 3 Muslim presenters, which they did. MSNBC denies it, claiming they still get airtime. Airtime is not hosting a show. The argument from MSNBC is that they wanted news coverage instead of these taped and scripted shows. That may be true for one of these guys, but you could certainly have any one of them host the live coverage of the news. The problem? Everyone's brain burst from their skulls and ran away. And now you're not going to get an honest assessment from anybody, because what I can tell you is this. I am but a humble man who complains on the internet. I don't know the history of Israel-Palestine, and I'm not going to try to explain it. I'm not going to sit here and morally equivocate. I can tell you that what Hamas did is an act of terror, and it's explicitly wrong. I can say that as Israel retaliates, there's going to be massive collateral damage. Israel should seek to minimize it. They claim to be, but people are still dying. You then get people saying, yes, but Israel cut off water and food into Gaza. That's a war crime. While others say, for what responsibility does Israel have to give them food and water? Where's Egypt? The Rafah crossing exists. And I'm just sitting back like, yo, this ain't America. Okay? I don't know what to tell you about your conflict, but it ain't America. And that's the problem with U.S. meddling in foreign policy. And what I just don't understand is why everyone's so obsessed with being on one side or the other. Fine, dude, whatever, man. I'm not. Okay? I can only just speak in plain generalities. War is bad. War is horrible. Innocent people die in war. Welcome to conflict. You cannot just come out and be like, during this multi-thousand years historical, religious conflict, which has found its most recent iteration, you cannot just come out and be like, one's bad, one's good. Okay? I mean, you can, right? But that's not what I do. I have no idea. I can only tell you that war is horrible. And if you come to me and say, Israel did this, I'm like, welcome to war. People are like, look what Israel is doing to Gaza. It's collective punishment. It's bad. And I'm like, I mean, look, man, it's war. What do you think happens in war? This is why war is bad. Maybe Hamas should not have torn down the fences and killed a bunch of civilians. And then people say, maybe Israel shouldn't have put them in an open air prison. Maybe there shouldn't have been a 1948 war. Bro, you want to go back in time, all the way back? Fine. And then maybe we can figure out who threw the first rock. I ain't playing that game, because you can do it everywhere. The only difference is with an active conflict and a historical conflict, people have chosen sides on this one. For the most part, when it comes to like China and Taiwan, there's just not much fervor over it. Now, to be fair, I mean, I get it. Taiwan is not being obliterated. They're getting a decent amount of support. My point is simply, People's brains have exploded. Let me show you how massively people's brains have just. Let me see what we got. What do we have? What do we have pulled up? This one's my favorite. The left, shattering of the mind. Andy says queers for Palestine were there at London Palestine rally today, along with LGBT stands with Palestine. Others in attendance also included Islamists, Hamas supporters, and the far left. What I love about all of this, and I'm glad that they're coming out and holding these signs and everything. Yeah, these people would be at best, their best case scenario, 10 years in jail in Gaza if they openly came out and admitted to engaging in LGBT behaviors or caught doing it. These people that are coming out in the West, I'll tell you what the left is. This is your perfect example. And I'm so happy that these people expose themselves for who they are. That's why I love free speech. They stand for nothing. Nothing. They don't care about children being killed. They don't care about innocent civilians being killed. They only care about hating you. They're demons, figuratively. They're evil. They are it is the yin yang. Within light, there is darkness. Within darkness, there is light. I would say that the anti-establishment forces represent the light, being that it is imperfect and there still does exist darkness within. There are people who would subvert and manipulate. There are people in the anti-establishment factions who are not good people and just masquerade as anti-establishment for money, grifters. They exist. But overwhelmingly, I think that what we represent is an attempt to honestly assess what's going on to make the world better. The left is an inversion of that. People who hate and want chaos, destruction, fear, and pain. Don't take my word for it. Look only at the absolute absurdity of people saying queers for Palestine. In Israel, if you're LGBT, you're mostly fine. I mean, every society has its repressive faction of sorts, but you can be gay in Israel. In Palestine, you can't. In fact, you might die because it's happened. I'm not going to pull the stories up. They're graphic and they're gruesome, but many of them exist. Read the stories about what they do to people who are LGBT. This shows these people don't know, don't care, are simply marching in lockstep like a zombie horde. NPCs, whatever. Horrifying. But at least they expose themselves. They expose themselves for who they are. This is from Wikipedia, LGBT rights in the state of Palestine. And they basically just mention it's, 10 years in jail, violates the penal code of Gaza, criminalizes same-sex activity, et cetera, et cetera. They say there are no civil rights that protect them. 10 years imprisonment in Gaza. The West Bank is a little bit different. But in the West Bank, it's less about the law and more about you just are not likely to survive. Hassan. Hey, he's got a good tweet. Take a look at this one. He says the McDonald's universe is in a state of disarray. Here we have this. McDonald's is donating thousands of free meals to the Israel Defense Forces and citizens after Hamas attack. 4,000 meals daily to the IDF. And why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Uh-oh. From McDonald's Oman. I love the shattered brains. Oman stands with Gaza. They basically put out the statement being like, yo, McDonald's in Israel has nothing to do with what we do, and we stand with Gaza. And then you have McDonald's Pakistan official statement. I absolutely love this. Capitalism, yeah, I'm sorry. Multinational capitalism struggles to survive this environment of war. That's just the reality of what it is, man. Because Pakistan is like, hey, leave us out of it. Oman is like, we stand with Palestine, and Israel is like, we stand with IDF. Why? Because they're selling products to the majority of that country. McDonald's Oman knows that the support from McDonald's of Israel is going to cost them business. So they have to come out and be like, no, we're with the other guys. Welcome to war. I think it's absolutely enlightening. Enlightening. Oh, but wait, there's so much more. I just love this. You're not going to get me to take a side for the most part. Like, I'll give you my opinions and thoughts on what's likely. Here's from the BBC. Egypt warned Israel days before Hamas struck. U.S. committee chairman says. Okay. NBC News. U.S. investigating whether Iran gave advanced training to Hamas militants. Whoa. So it could be that Israel knew in advance And the argument we now get from many people is that Israel did know and they let it happen because they've been funding Hamas. And while it is true that there was some support from Netanyahu, I think it was that he thought, well, I don't know enough about it. Okay. But the cursory articles are like, he thought that he could negotiate with them and you can't. And so he made it all worse. But now we've got it from the U.S. that Iran may have done it. Oh, with Lindsey Graham calling for bombing Iran. Shattered brains. Hamas attack was an Israeli intelligence failure on multiple fronts. This is the other side. Israel didn't know. They could have known. And now it's an intelligence failure. Perhaps. This is where we are. We are in the most interesting of times, I must say. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give you my favorite. Well, I can say there are many on the right who I believe are absolutely losing it, calling for censorship, or at least insinuating there should be some, advocating for war or intervention. Look, man, I don't think the U.S. should be involved with Ukraine. I think there are better arguments for why the U.S. should be involved in Israel. I'm still anti-intervention. I understand the crisis that is emerging and where it can go, but we're trying to avoid World War III. So how we stabilize this, don't look at me. I'm not here to give you answers. I ain't got none. But I love this one. I do love how the institutions are being exposed and the culture war is imploding. BLM LA faces backlash over support for Hamas. Really? Take a look at this from the Anti-Defamation League. I want to say this to, what's his name? Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO. I want to say this to the Anti-Defamation League. You are evil. You are despicable, evil people. You are the cause of what we see when the far leftists advocate for Hamas. It is your fault because you refuse to admit your role in all of this. And to be honest, the ADL is a tool, is a weapon. They lie, they cheat, they steal. They are evil people. Have a nice day. Fringe left groups express support for Hamas's invasion and brutal attack in Israel. Fringe left groups? Sure. Who's the fringe left groups? Well, it's DSA Salt Lake, DSA SF, DSA Long Beach, DSA Pittsburgh, the Young Democratic Socialists of America. Oh, the national chapter. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Their chapter in North Carolina. They mentioned that some lawmakers affiliated with the DSA have denounced them. Independent Black Lives Matter chapters. Oh, ADL, we love you so much. You're so predictable. BLM Philly, BLM Grassroots, BLM Chicago, BLM Phoenix, BLM Detroit. Heavens me. Fringe groups. You mean local chapters? I love this one. BLM Grassroots is a splinter group not affiliated with Black Lives Matter national organization. And I introduce you to this wonderful caveat. It is important to note that Black Lives Matter chapters are run independently from the National Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. And many are completely unaffiliated. The Black Lives Matter national organization has not yet commented on the current Israel-Hamas war. Do they need to? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the founder of Black Lives Matter, and this is the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, referenced by the ADL, which includes Patrisse Cullors, who called for the end of Israel in 2015. Dude, I don't care. I'm sick of the hypocrisy. Nobody wants to look at the bigger picture. War? Well, you know, some people say war is hell, but some people say it's not. There's that famous quote, people are sharing it. War is not hell because hell is not full of innocent people. It's full of the guilty. And war is almost nothing but innocent bystanders. I'm not here to argue who owns what land, but I can argue this. Israel was attacked by Hamas in the most recent incursion. Hamas terrorists targeted civilians intentionally, as argued by the left, for bargaining chips against Israel because they believe they're in an open-air prison and it's Israel's fault. Logic. Egypt has the Rafah crossing. It is not Israel's fault. But they'll argue 1948, the Palestinians were pushed from their land, blah, 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 but welcome to war. What would happen if Native Americans started bombing cities? I mean, come on, it's war. You can't have it, okay? And I don't think there's any good solutions. There is only what humans think is just and think is fair, and then there's reality. Power wins, and the left has often realized that. So in 1948, I guess there's a civil war, is what many refer to it as. Israel wins. Palestine loses. Welcome to war. No one's happy about it. And now it's ongoing. I look back at the history of the United States, and I'm not sitting here being like, yay, it's so great that, that there were Native Americans who were murdered and stripped from their land. I'm not talking about the Aztecs and the Incas. I'm talking about the Hopi. I'm talking about the little, gatherers and farmers. Yeah, they had it rough. But they were also being terrorized by the Comanche, and I think the Apache. I'm not super well versed. My point is this, man. War is the state of the world. And it is only because we have had this peaceful era, and that's like putting it lightly, because it's not really. The U.S. has still been at war, but it's more peaceful. It's only because of this we grow accustomed to this idea there's not going to be conflict over land or whatever. Dude, here's what I see. People screaming into the wind online, Israel, 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 Palestine, Palestine, Palestine. And I'm like, stop moralizing to me, man. It means nothing. Yeah, I get it. Hamas, they ideologically view any Israeli citizen as an evil settler. The far left does as well, which means they will kill them. On the right, I think this is where the honor lies in trying to avoid killing civilians, but due to the collateral damage of Israel's response, a lot of civilians are dying. You then get Ron DeSantis, and he said something like, not everyone in Palestine is Hamas, but they are all anti-Semitic. And I'm just like, hey, I got an idea. The U.S. shouldn't be involved in these things. Here's the big challenge. I am not so naive. If World War III were to erupt between nations not involving the U.S., should we get involved? I don't have all the answers for you, my friends. I can say generally when it comes to regional conflict, we shouldn't be involved because y'all can argue among themselves. We are not the judge and the world police. We don't sit here and determine what is or should be. At least we do. We shouldn't. But the issue then becomes, if Israel does engage in the Samson option and decide to nuke its adversaries, and we sit back and do nothing, does the world just end and burn down around us? At a certain point, there is a challenging question, which is why I'm not always absolutely anti-intervention. If I live in a big house and I got roommates, and the roommates are setting things on fire to hurt each other, I mean, I can sit back and watch my house burn down too. Or I could say I have to get involved and stop this fighting. There's two people fighting in my house. They live there. They have a right to live there. There's nothing I can do about it, right? I typically stay out of their business, say, I don't care about why you guys are fighting. But then one day, one of the other guys, there's like a fire between the two rooms. Yeah, you got to do something about it because we all live here too. If it does devolve into World War III, we're screwed. And that's the big challenge here. There's no easy answer to all of this. All I can say is, bro, people are allowed to have opinions. That's it. We got people who work at Timcast who are very pro-Israel. We got people who are very critical of Israel for the collateral damage. Okay. Ain't nobody here celebrating civilians dying. Nobody. Not from anybody. Ain't nobody defending what Hamas did, targeting civilians. It's a question of how do we minimize civilian casualties? My problem is Hamas engages in these attacks, and then everyone expects Israel just to sit there and get bombarded by rockets. It's war, man. You fire rockets at somebody, they're gonna strike back. Let's think about it this way. You got two neighbors that are feuding, and one, okay, look. A guy is feuding with his neighbor over where the property line is. And he says he keeps moving his fence on my property line. There's no good deed. Nobody agrees. And then fighting breaks out. I'm supposed to be like, okay, let me research the deed history going back hundreds of years to figure it out. Bro, I can't figure that out for you. I can't. But then what happens is this. I come across a conflict where one guy jumps the fence and punches the other guy's kid in the face. That guy pulls out a gun and shoots the attacker. And then everyone's like, why did he kill him? He didn't have to. Shut up. When I see these stories where it's like a guy was robbing a liquor store with a knife and then the guy behind the counter shoots the guy with the knife, they're like, he didn't have to kill him. I'm like, you started the fight. So in this instance, it's a bit more complicated than that. They say, yeah, but, Palestine is in an open air prison. Bro, Rafa, I'm going to say it again. Egypt can open the border too, and they can allow a lot of whatever they want, and they don't. International reasons. And the argument I hear from the pro-Palestine side is Egypt doesn't want refugees pouring into their country, which is a weak state as it is. Fair point. So what do? Ain't no good solution. That doesn't justify Hamas targeting children and civilians. But that's it, because that's their bargaining chip. If these Hamas fighters view anyone in Israel, even tourists, as fair game, okay. You tear down that security fencing, what happens? Everybody knows what happens. Even people who are pro-Palestine knows it happens. You will get many ideologically driven Palestinians from Gaza going around and just killing. It will be war. There's no good answer. So spare me your lectures. Spare me. People who are complaining that Israel is lying or bombing civilians, they're allowed to complain about it. They're allowed to criticize Israel. No one ever said Israel's perfect. Nobody's perfect. I certainly think everyone recognizes what Hamas did is infinitely worse. And now people are mad that Israel's engaged in what some refer to as collective punishment. Dude, this is why I'm just like, man, America first, secure our border, bring up manufacturing back, mind our own effing business. Because there's no answers here. But I assure you, man, you're walking towards World War III. So my message to everybody, you're tweeting into a void. When you tweet at me, I got people tweeting at me that I have colonizer, white supremacist, blah, blah staffers because they're pro-Israel. I got people saying I got staffers who are anti-Semitic because they're critical of Israel's collateral damage coming from Israel. And I'm just like, your words, they mean nothing to me. Dude, people have opinions. We have a wide range of opinions here. That's the whole point. We believe in free speech. Ain't nobody has all the answers. Tweeting at me is a waste of time. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.